thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of TNT, the KCal Kids. I'm Ty Justice.
Todd Fox.
Now, today we're going to start out with the KCal Kids Classic Corner with the classic Disney short, Pigs is Pigs.
Ooh, I like this one.
Let's have you start it off. What's this about?
This is about if you've ever gone to like Hometown Buffet when it was still a thing and you'd see those Norman Rockwell like drawings. Mm-hmm. When you walk in before the cash register, you pay your money to go in. That's how it will work, a buffet, obviously.
Right.
But there was one picture that reminded me a lot of this cartoon where the old lady she has a slab of meat on the weigher and she's kind of putting her finger on it and then he's putting his finger underneath it to keep it at the same price.
Right.
So it starts off with a train. What is it? Not conductor, but a
station manager.
Master.
Yeah.
He's there. He's overlooking the local station of the town, and a gentleman, an Irish descent, comes up and says, "I want my two pigs that I ordered." And there's a little thing there where he does everything by the book. It says that the train master does everything by the book. He reads everything. He even has to greet somebody as the book would say.
Mm-hmm. And price things accordingly.
Yes, and it has to be that. No other way, right? Mm-hmm. So it turns into that Norman Rockwell situation because the man wants to pay 44 cents for pets. It's under pets. 48 cents is pigs. And so like he freaks out and he's like, I'm not going to pay 48 cents for pigs. But clearly these are pets. They are not pigs. And the whole thing starts with, the train master says, well, pigs are pigs.
Yeah.
So you pay
pigs is pigs because he's an Irishman.
Yeah, you pay 48 cents. And so then he's like, I refuse not to. And he gets offended and the guy storms out of there. And now the train master is stuck with the guinea pigs.
Right. It's a Scotsman.
Scotsman, there you go.
That storms out. That's right, because I rewatched it. And no, you're absolutely right. He storms out. And then what happens is...
Basically, this is one of the trippiest episodes because when we talk about KCal Kids all the time on how the show used to be a premise of let's do a skit inside of Disneyland that will lead to a cartoon that fits the skit. I remember when I first saw this episode, again, it was from KCal Kids. It was one of the most awkward transitions of all time. They just got out of like Pooh Bear's, like when they had turned that into Pooh Bear or it was still the Bears, I forget, but it was that ride. Mm-hmm. And the one kid, the blonde kid, I forgot his name.
Marcus, I think?
Yeah, Marcus, he comes walking out of there and he goes, now we'll play a cartoon. There was not, like, it had nothing to do with their scene and nothing. And how could you? Because, I mean, maybe if you can go by the train station and tie that in.
Station master, yeah.
But they didn't. They just came out of like the Pooh Bear ride now. And the guy's like, and now a cartoon. And it's weird because that cartoon, it didn't get into how they were making them, but it just showed that once he realized, hey, I got to feed these guinea pigs, like they started multiplying.
And that's the crux of this.
Yeah. Their eyebrows kind of like did the whole, hey now. And then all of a sudden it goes from 2 to 5. Like they just pop out from the side.
This is an interesting episode for a few reasons, it's an interesting short, excuse me.
Absolutely.
So it's still a theatrical short. Mm-hmm. But no, it's fascinating because it's not on Disney Plus, and you talk about KCal Kids, and you remember that it was an awkward transition into that particular short because basically you're talking about the birds and the bees.
Pretty much.
It's an animated short about sex in the animal kingdom, and people have the phrase multiply like rabbits. Guinea pigs also multiply very quickly. So and then because the station master does not want to sell the pigs at the proper price because he thinks that they are pigs and they're just not pets, and the Scotsman who ordered them won't take them for that price, the station master is stuck with them, and they start multiplying like crazy, comically so, where it's just he can't handle it after a while. There are just so many and so many and so many. And the funny thing is, this is based on a story by American writer Ellis Parker Butler, and it was first produced in 1905. So it has a very Meet Me in St. Louis turn of the 19th to the 20th century feel. It's got that great Americana that Walt was trying to emulate in Disneyland and in general, his childhood that he fondly remembered. So it's all tied in there, but.
Did that have to do with? I'm sorry to interrupt, Ty,
no,
but did that have to do with the way that they drew it? Because remember, it was crudely drawn, a lot of like triangular shapes or not very detailed as we're accustomed to with Disney cartoons.
So it was very no, you're right. It was very angular, and that was part of the new style in the 50s. I remember they did a few things like that, like something Toot and Boom or something like that. Where I'll find the proper poster, but this was also one of their later cartoons where it was about cavemen creating music and where music came from. It also has that very flat two-dimensional style because I think a lot of other cartoon studios at the time, like UPA specifically, which broke off from, well, it didn't break off from, but the artists that started UPA worked at Disney during the strike. He fired them after a while, and they created their own studio because they wanted to do more angular, not more angular, but more expressive experimental designs. And I think they started getting into that and started winning Academy Awards. And then Disney, I think, picked up on that. Like, maybe we should do some of this. So in the 50s, you just had this kind of alternate style where it's a very flat, two-dimensional, angular style, like you pointed out. And I think they were trying to catch on to a lot of the commercial animation that was going on at the time through UPA and other smaller, like Screen Gems and other smaller animation companies that were being a little more experimental, either on TV or wherever it was. And of course Disney started making cartoons like that, which is kind of cute. It kind of fits though. I mean, the style is different, but because it's such an awkward topic, I think it kind of adds to the how special this one short is. And I think it's very interesting, and the message is kind of interesting too because it's actually a satire of bureaucracy and the absurd consequences that can result from a rigid adherence to rules without common sense, and which is kind of what we see, with the station master.
Yeah, and he's falling into a book to where no matter the consequences, he's going to have to deal with it because it's not what the book says. And I thought funny scenes in that cartoon where it shows two dancing guinea pigs, like sort of with top hats, go around this little lamppost, and then they come back and there's four more.
That's right. Yeah. I forgot about that part. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, they have very creative ways of showing these little guinea pigs multiplying very rapidly.
Yeah, or he takes a shovel to shovel them into this box, and as he shovels two in, like six appear.
Right yeah. Now, it was funny how they showed this rabid multiplication of these animals and how he was kind of losing his mind over it. He didn't know what to do.
Yep.
But I just always thought it was interesting that's kind of the breakdown is about how people who are, for Disney, that was interesting too. People who are, avid rule followers, sometimes you have to look beyond the rules and kind of go beyond what's written. And it's kind of an interesting little metaphor there for something in the 50s. 1954, I think this was made.
And I thought it was very trippy to see how they did the Morse code, shocking the bird every time they would relay it to the railroad headquarters, and then it went through all the levels of the company. It kind of taught you how big industry works,
right?
And corporations work. And so it went to the top, and then they would argue. They had a board of directors, and it was pretty crazy. And he's sending out telegram after telegram because he's freaking out because there's more and more guinea pigs, and he doesn't know what to do with them. So
the longer they took, the more that they would multiply. It does not help the little guy out.
And it was getting dire.
Which is kind of funny because that's the way corporations work. Really, like the more dire need you have and the more bureaucracy or red tape it has to go through, the less help you're going to get and the more crazy you're going to go.
Longer it's going to go, yeah.
Exactly. That is interesting. And it's funny how Disney in the 50s and the 60s as well were doing things like this. Like there was a Disney short about money, and it was Scrooge McDuck was in it. I think maybe in Huey, Dewey, and Louie, if I'm not mistaken, or another character. And they were talking about how money works in the Federal Reserve and how the economy works. And it was actually very detailed. It's not included in much that I can find, like physically, in terms of home video, or even on Disney Plus. But it was a very interesting. It was on social media during the pandemic, I think, and I caught a glimpse of it. I go, this is really trippy. I want to find the whole video and the whole short. But it was, I think, in the 60s by then. But it was just really interesting. But it's funny how sometimes subversion would make its way into Disney shorts. And it's comical and it's subtle, but it works really well.
It took me a while, but rewatching it years later, obviously the part that got me was when they got all the lawyers together and everyone in the boardroom, and they finally came up with, okay, what is a pig? What are they going to charge? And they resolved it, and then immediately they switched from their suits to golfing equipment. And they were like, all right, we're done. And I was like, That is how corporations work. They'll settle something and then they'll go golfing or they'll go vacation.
They wash their hands because they don't have to deal with the dirty work. And how did he resolve it at the end? How did the station master resolve it at the very end once he got the okay?
I think it was resolved as they are pets.
Right.
And so it went back down to 44 cents. And then when he tried to go and to the Irishman and say, hey, here's your guinea pigs. And the guy's like, he moved away. It's like,
the Scotsman, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, And so it was a dire thing back to the corporation. And the corporation's like, okay, we're going to have to pick these up and take them to inherit them and take them to our offices or whatever, their storage. And it said that it took 600 freight cars to get the guinea pigs out of there. Then it shows the building just overflowing with guinea pigs, and now it's their problem.
Yeah, and a happy ending. A happy ending that is, it's kind of funny that even in that era, people were tired of bureaucratic red tape. Mm-hmm. And this was in the 50s where most people think America was at its peak. And in many ways it was, but that's also because the corporate tax rate was like 90 some odd percent, 92%. But, that's how you make America great, by taxing the billionaires. Now, it's funny that even then they were just sick of it, and I think this kind of harkens back to an interesting time period in American history, not to get too historical about it, but, people had to fight for unions, people had to fight for fair wages and fair pay, and for it to be, really work the way it's supposed to work, you have to have checks and balances. And before that, the turn of the century, you didn't really have that. You didn't really have like a lot of fair play at all. It was like you had the robber barons and you had all these magnates and steel magnates and Rockefellers and all that. And, the little guy, you're basically slave labor.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until the 50s where things kind of started really leveling out with a lot of people fighting for unions. I think, either there was a huge chunk of the workforce that was unionized and made America better, but this is just a cartoon. But there are a lot of other echoes within this one cartoon that are kind of fascinating, and those are the ones that usually stick with you when there's a different layer to it that affect your life.
Yeah,
because we all know what it's like to be come across this red tape and just be hamstrung by stupid rules or so many layers of communication that it's going to take forever for a problem to be fixed before it gets much, much worse. And this is a prime example of that. Pigs is pigs.
Yeah, this was definitely a relatable episode, even if you're not a guinea pig fan.
Right.
You could see the underlying tone behind it. So it was a brilliant cartoon. It was obviously a one-off, but the acting, it just reminded me a lot of like the episodes we talked about before, the Casey Jones, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's a one-off character, but the characters are done good. The music is good. Mm-hmm. It's relatable. And it's one of those ones that's shockingly to me, they did have different episodes where they would rerun some of the classics. So I know of which this was on 2 K-Cal Kid episodes. Mm. I don't remember the scenario they announced it the second time, but I do remember watching it a second time different from that first episode with Marcus introducing it.
All right.
But I do remember, I found it, and then more and more I thought about it later on and before we did the show. I was like, man, how did that one make that show in the first place? And then second, how is it, again, saying, hey, let's put this back on there again, So it was an introduction to me because, again, had the K-Cal Kids not premiered those episodes, I would not have seen 95% of the history of Disney because of that show.
Yeah.
And this is another episode that I never would have seen.
No.
Obviously, as you said, it's not in production, or not in production, but it's not on Disney Plus and things like that.
Not really available,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny because around that time we think of everybody being very squeamish, in the 50s and the 40s, and that wasn't necessarily the case. After World War II, soldiers were kind of, you see your best friends get blown up, you're ready to handle more mature storylines. Mm-hmm. In the 30s it was much more like escape the depression, live in fantasy, but they wanted more realism when they got back from the war, the soldiers, and everybody was ready for that. And even in cartoons, again, these weren't made for kids. These were made for everyone. Yeah. So, their audience was everyone. And, talking about hamsters, which became, an American tradition after a while, having them as pets, it wasn't a big deal because it was natural. You had a lot of people we were still based on farming culture. We still are, but even though we don't pay a lot of respect to our farmers, even though we die without them, in agriculture. And that was just kind of the way of life. Farmers, people in the Midwest, they didn't care about that. They helped, the cows give birth. They helped like with breech births with large animals. That this stuff meant nothing to them. This was natural.
But just like in the cartoon, although 4 cents back then might have been a lot more than it is today, but that stuff meant something to them.
Oh, yeah. No.
Because they had a bottom line. So, yes, they were the backbone of America, and yes, we depended on them heavily, but it's not like they were getting paid like it.
No, no.
And they had to watch their P's and Q's.
That's true. And the funny thing is, I remember my grandmother would say when she was a little girl, a half penny. They used to not only have pennies, but a half penny, which would that would get them a bag of candy, like just a bag of candy at the corner store.
Right.
Boom, big old bag of candy. 10 cents, you'd get a huge slab of bacon. 5 cents for a loaf of bread, so I mean, their money was money. It was still like, like a couple cents was like $10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may not seem like much now. You're like, oh, 2 cents. Who's going to quibble over 2 cents? It wasn't just 2 cents. It was different, but it was a different time.
It was definitely, because I can go back to my grandpa. Like I will, I would do it. I think he taught me as a kid to pick up a penny and always save pennies, nickels, dimes, and especially he would say silver currency. You always want to keep that on you. And he taught me the value of money very early. And he used to be a penny pitcher because of where he came from, wartime Germany and all that stuff. And then coming over to Brooklyn during the war because he didn't want to fight there. But having to scrape the bottom of the barrel up and so he valued money and valued food. And so that's why he's always like, always finish your plate. Don't waste money, stuff like that. So
that's right. Yeah.
That's a kind of how he grew up. So yeah, I could definitely see that too, because again, like you said, man, going to the movie theater was what, 3-5 cents, something like that.
10 cents, 15 cents, sometimes 25. But you'd get like 2 movies, a cartoon, a newsreel, and a cereal.
Yeah, and you might be able, if you're really a big spender, 50 cents to $1 can get you and your date,
right.
for everything.
Dude,
little meal there.
Yeah, if you look at how much stuff, coffee was 5 cents a cup.
Yeah,
10 cents a cup. In
unbelievable.
The 30s. It was nuts.
But a burger was 15 cents.
And the thing is, though, that wasn't even my grandmother's time when this short takes place. Pigs is Pigs takes place around what? The original story was that I said 1905? Yeah, 1905. So money was worth much more then than it was even in the 30s when my grandmother, in the 40s when my grandmother was a kid. So, we're talking about more money than it seems now, and not to mention just the currency inflation and all that, but just the time period in which your money could buy. It was a little bit more money. But so this man was standing on principle, this Scotsman, and he was standing on principle, not paying the extra 2 cents back then. But another interesting thing about this short is that it was actually nominated for an Academy Award.
Did not know that.
And the style you mentioned earlier, I forgot about this, but Evan Earl, who was a background artist, did the work on this. He did the unique stylings, and that's why it looks the way it looks. He also did work on Lady and the Tramp and Peter Pan, but he's best known for his backgrounds for Sleeping Beauty. And if you remember, I love Sleeping Beauty because it's a 2.55. I love original CinemaScope, which was not 2.35, but 2.55. And, in live action films, it would warp if you kind of panned too quickly or panned at all. Eventually Fox fixed that. But the first widescreen film in CinemaScope was Disney's first CinemaScope film was Lady and the Tramp. But by 1959, it was Sleeping Beauty. And just the color in it's gorgeous. It's a beautifully, artistically beautiful film to watch. Kind of boring, but just in terms of story, but just visually, it's gorgeous. But he did the backgrounds. He would do those square trees with those veiny-looking roots and branches throughout all of it, and that's why it has such a unique look. And he was a wonderful artist. He was a really great artist, and I loved his work. But this is why, like you were mentioning earlier, this is why it looked the way it did, because it had his unique styling. But he had that crazy 2D, 3D styling where it was uniquely his. You can always tell when it's his trees. When an Evan Earl tree, it's his. You're like, oh no, that's so-and-so. That's his stuff, because he had such a unique style, which I think was really cool, because Disney didn't always allow a lot of variation in its style. You had the Disney style. But with stuff like this, they were getting a little more loose and free in the 50s, because they were also looking for something visually more stunning, because in the 50s, because of TV, they were losing a lot of their audience. A lot of studios were. Their theatrical audience.
Yeah, because why go to the movies when you can get it at home, finally,
Yeah, exactly.
So I could appreciate the drawings in this one. I remember the bellhop having the big, the big kind of belly, but it might have just been his suit, but it never moved.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then you could tell, some of the guys that were sitting in the boardroom had, they were drawn like with the same kind of faces, but maybe different eyes, or one had different mustache, or
But they all looked the same.
They all looked the same, yeah.
Because
So
all suits look the same.
yeah,
man.
so that was pretty cool, man. There's a lot of, like I said, undertone meanings to a lot of this, but it was cool, man. I liked it.
No, there's a lot of undercurrent. No, it's true, and I liked it too. It's really good. And you know what this reminded me of, though? The first time I saw it, and as an adult when I rewatched it, I go, "This is Trouble with Tribbles. This is that Star Trek episode." It's because it was the same thing. It's these two little tribbles. I should have brought it out. I have it stuffed back there. I have like my own little tribble, just the one, just in case.
Hasn't multiplied yet?
Not yet. Just the one, just the one. But it's honestly, it reminded me of that episode, and I looked it up, and the writer of the episode, David Gerald, who wrote the classic episode for the original series of Star Trek, The Trouble with Tribbles, he admits to owing a debt to Ellis Parker Butler, who wrote the original story. So, everybody takes their inspiration from somewhere, but I'm glad they could at least admit that. But that was the first thing I thought of, because I'm like, it's like a space guinea pig, this thing. And the episode is a classic, but it instantly reminded me of that when I saw it. I'm like, oh yeah. I go, this is Star Trek, but this was first. So this came first, Pigs is Pigs, and then the Star Trek episode came like 12 some odd years later.
What was those things called? The ones from Star Trek?
Tribbles.
Tribbles is Tribbles.
Trials and Tribulations.
There you go.
They did a part of the animated series of Star Trek, because they did technically, like, the original cast of the original series did the animated series in the 70s that they did, like a continuation, right, of the 5-year mission. So they were in there, and there's an actual animated episode, I think, More Troubles, More Tribbles, in different iterations. I think Deep Space Nine did like Trials and Tribulations or something like that. They kept that theme going. So in a way, that story in Pigs is Pigs has lived on in other media and other genres, which is kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, and but it was a really cute short. Again, it's not on Disney Plus because it infers sex and birds and the bees and multiplication, and it's unfortunate that we're so sensitive. In the 50s, they weren't necessarily. And look, I'm not talking about like woke or how certain political parties have commandeered that word, but in certain ways, Disney specifically is very, very overly cautious when it comes to their content, innocent content, natural content. The Europeans look at us and they laugh. They're like, really? You guys want to show RoboCop to kids, but you're not going to show like something about guinea pigs?
And we're talking about the most action those guinea pigs saw on camera in that episode was
eyebrows.
The eyebrows, and they kind of touched noses briefly.
Right, yeah.
That was it.
It's the most puritanical sex you'll ever see on screen by cartoons.
I mean, the only thing you could think, again, they didn't say which guinea pig was the male or the female, but you could kind of tell, and then you had the different colors, and that was it. So,
yeah.
I thought it was innocent. I thought it was cute. I thought it was a very good fairy tale type cartoon, and it made its point.
And in the 90s, that's another thing I was going to bring out too, because in the 90s, they definitely were more laissez-faire, more relaxed when it came to rules about that stuff. And sometimes they would have to, after the fact, make apologies and do that, but they released this stuff without the sensitive eye that came after. Even Warner Brothers, because they released a Laserdisc set called The Golden Age of Looney Tunes, and that was like the first real set of like in-depth compilations of all the Looney Tunes cartoons. And the very first edition of the first volume had something called Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips. And that was a World War II short. That's the name of it. I didn't make it up, folks. Listener discretion is advised.
No cancellation.
No cancellation. I know, we did it already. But they released it. They replaced it when they started printing more of that set, because they're like, well, this is a little much, even though it was a war set. But in the 90s, you had a lot of stuff that was shown that's not shown anymore, that people are like, oh, people are much more aware. I shouldn't say oversensitive, but a lot of people are much more aware to how offensive things are. But now that we're so far beyond that, I think it's good to really keep talking about this stuff, because we see where we are now in society. And, it's better to talk about it than lock it away, because when you lock it away, there are no conversations about it, which really sucks. And Pigs is Pigs, just as a small example of that, is in one of the Disney Treasures sets. That was that compilation, and that was really nice. But that was kind of the last time Disney really went on a limb and put more risque stuff out. Warner Brothers was doing it for a while with the Warner sets for Looney Tunes and all that. that. And then they got real scared when it came to the second volume of Tom and Jerry for Blu-ray, when they were going to do the two offensive shorts, Mouse Cleaning and Casanova Cat, I think, that had blackface gags in them. And it's like, well, then, they screwed all that up and they got real scared for a while. But now, through their archive, they're starting to come back and do it again. They're showing a little more backbone and chutzpah, which I respect and I like, and I'm glad they did that. But I hope Disney kind of follows suit, just so there could be more conversations. Because this stuff is natural to talk about. These are things we should talk about, even though Americans, as Americans, we come from puritanical roots, which are hypocritical in their origins too. Because let's face it, it's estimated that 80% of all puritanical marriages were because the woman was pregnant. So it's not as pure as we think, and that's the problem. But like I said, conversations with your kids about natural things are important. We shouldn't be afraid of that. And, when it comes to race in these old cartoons, we shouldn't glorify it. But I think these old shorts and cartoons should be talked about because these are important conversations to have with each other, our children, and just in general, they're important.
Yeah, there's definitely lessons to teach from these cartoons. But it's just sad that it would be like an off-air type of show like ours that would bring this kind of stuff to light. It's not mainstream. It's not available as much. Like, you really have to dig to find these type of cartoons.
Yeah. And they're old quality. They're from VHS tapes that people recorded, or maybe DVDs if they got lucky to have a release.
And how many people outside of their kids not having a PS5 themselves have a DVD player anymore anyways too? Because everything is streaming right now. No, I'm just saying because you have so many people that are just they gave up on having VHS because maybe they don't have the collection that you do. That it's a must for you to have a VHS player or even
DVD 4K Laserdisc.
Yeah, or my favorite was the rewinder.
I forgot about those.
Yeah. So you have all this stuff for a reason. But today, nowadays, with everything streaming, it's hard to kind of find that. So if these companies aren't putting these IPs or these because they're too risky, they don't want to have any blowback on their overall bottom dollar. Mm-hmm. They won't even put them up, and then you lose that. It becomes memories for guys like me and you. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, we remember that episode, but Joe Schmo and everybody else doesn't.
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing is I remember this from I Love Lucy. I remember there were constantly episodes where they talk because of Lucy's shenanigans. They realize and they say this: there's no such thing as bad publicity. Mm-hmm. And there are episodes that showcase that over and over, and it is true. Even if you get bad blowback, like you said, or flack from a racist cartoon, if you frame it properly and you're like, hey, look, we have a commentary on this, we've got some black experts talking about it, film historians that are black, and which is the smart thing to do, bring them in, have a discussion, talk about how that relates to history at the time, then it's important, then it's an all good, and if you get if people hate that, they're hating, but that just means they're talking more about your product and more people are going to buy it. It's free publicity, man.
Out of curiosity, at least.
Exactly. And how many people hate watch things? I hate this. Click, rewind, play.
I know. I've heard a couple of the recent Marvel projects that the majority of their watchers are the haters. Right. Because they just want to be able to have the content to say, okay, this was extremely bad, and this is what I think. Yeah. They want to go through a detailed. Because it's easy to get the cliff notes of an episode or a show, but to actually watch it, and even if it's something you hate, and you're doing this type of podcast where it's like, okay, well, we're going to tell you the truth, or you got to watch it. You got to know it. Yeah, you got to know the content, else you're going to be exposed by the watchers that are watching you.
Exactly. So, they're like, that's not accurate. That's not correct.
I actually watched that. That's not true.
You're a liar, and you lose credibility.
And subscribers.
Exactly. By the way,
subscribe.
If you'd like to continue hearing us rant and rave about cancellation culture and things that are canceled and woke Superman and all that stuff, please like, share, and subscribe.
I feel like we should do something, Ty, like if like Pee Wee Herman's show used to do, if the keyword being subscribe.
The keyword for every episode is going to be subscribe.
Yeah, we'll yell,
subscribe, yay! We'll try not to be that obnoxious.
Yeah, please.
But unless it works, and then total obnoxious hosts.
If that gets you to subscribe, absolutely.
Yay! No, it's true. But no, I mean, and honestly, like, it leaves you, honestly, with a black eye as a company. If you're going to back out, because with, like, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but even if I have, bear with me. Once Warner Brothers announced that they were doing Tom and Jerry Volume 2 on Blu-ray, but without those two shorts that they previously announced that they remastered specifically for that release. Instantly, the next day, 126, and I looked, 126 one-star reviews. They pulled the release, and it still has been released to this day. They did that because they're like, well, if it's getting, ratioed, and this was before that was even a thing. They're like 126. They're like one-star reviews. Like we're gonna bomb out. We can't do that. So they actually pulled the release, which I'm glad, and it shows the power of the people. You know, if you go out there and you review bomb something like that really does deserve it. I mean, I'm not just talking about like the, something for being woke or whatever. If you actually look into something and it's really unfair, go right ahead. That's the moral thing to do because you have the power to do that these days. And you can stop a studio from releasing something subpar. You can stop them from releasing garbage to you and telling you that you have to take it.
Yeah, and dude, so many times before the narrative was always out there. Unless something completely bombed, if the narrative was strong enough to say, okay, the studios like this, the TV shows, the critics, your Siskel and Eberts, if they like it, then you have to like it. They're the voice of the people. They know what's good. So if they're giving it 5-star reviews, you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna spend my hard-earned money on going to see that movie or going to see that show, whatever, right? But nowadays, like you mentioned, everyone that has a podcast has a voice. And when you look at like the Rotten Tomatoes, just to be on the other side,
right.
Sometimes you'll see a movie that like you look skeptical at it, like, I don't know if that looks good. Let me see what the people think. And even if you're not a fan of Rotten Tomatoes, it literally tells you where the narrative is and what the audience really thinks. Because I've seen it to where the narrative is like, oh my God, there's this controversial character and you've got to like it. And it's at a 95% Rotten Tomatoes certified. Mm-hmm. You look at the audience score and it's 54%.
Exactly. That's why I love sites like Amazon. I know Amazon does horrible things, but at the same time, you have the people. If you look, we live in a society where now, if something is slightly off, people talk about it.
Yeah,
which is good because that creates. Because if there are monopolies out there, and there's not a lot of competition,
you only get one side.
There's no competitive nature to make things better for the people. But if you, as a consumer, can review the crap out of something that sucks, you are the competition because then either they have to make it better or they're going to lose a lot of money. So that's where the power comes in. Man, we really got on a different track with this. But
pigs is pigs.
Pigs is pigs, man. I'm telling you. Yay, subscribe. but it's true. Power of the people. And it's funny about how pigs is pigs. And these are kind of the conversations that these shorts sometimes enable. And that's really kind of cool. That's why we like talking about it, because it unlocks things.
Obscure as hell episode got us into this whirlwind of conversation.
Right. And it's true. Remember, if something sucks, review bomb it. But if it's good, subscribe. Or just leave comments. Lots of comments.
Yes. And tell your friends. Share it to your friends.
Tell your friends. But no, but it was a good short. And it does talk about bureaucracy. And like I said before, I think to cap this, the best art always has some kind of subtext to it, which is true and of the time period. And things are more fun when you know the history. Let's just say it. Like, not everybody loves history, but the more you know about history, the more fun these things are, because it's like that DiCaprio meme for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you're just watching something, you go like, hey.
Yeah, yeah, I know that.
I get that reference.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. But no, it was a good short. And again, Evan Earl, one of my favorite artists. And, he had a hand in it. That's why it had such a unique look. But now we're going to go to Animation Mecca, Saturday mornings. And today we're going with one of my personal favorites. And I think it kind of shaped my character as a smart-ass teenager eventually. But as a smart-ass child, this is kind of where it began. And that's going to be Garfield and Friends. It aired on CBS from 1988 to 1994, had 121 full episodes and 363 segments, because I don't know if you remember, but the show wasn't like 24 minutes of just one theme. You had one episode, a different episode from U.S. Acres, which is the farmland creatures, and then you had another Garfield at the end. And
Which kept it fresh, in my opinion.
yeah, it kind of did. And it's actually an old technique, because if you look at Crusader Rabbit, which I keep mentioning, or in previous episodes, or Rocky and Bullwinkle, it's kind of like multi-segmented shows. And this is kind of an old technique. And one of the last times this really kind of happened on a network show. But they really had that, and they also had the things called quickies, and that sounds weird, but a cartoon quickie. And that was basically one segment of a show, like one little interstitial before or after a commercial. They'd be like 10 seconds, 15 seconds long, but it would almost be like a panel from a comic strip, and like it would be like a real
3 frames or so.
Yeah, and it'd be a real simple joke, and the camera would stay in one place. So they had a lot of unique techniques that they used in this show that kind of mimicked it being a comic strip, because as we know, Garfield started in 1976, was nationalized and comic strips in 1978. First TV special was in 1982, and then they had a lot of TV specials that finally led to his show in 1988. But and all the specials actually were sung. The theme songs for the specials were sung by Lou Rawls, of all people, a Motown legend, and it was a lot of fun. But this show was just sarcastic and just didn't hold back, because it was kind of like Married with Children. I think it was Roseanne or Married with Children. I think it was Roseanne. The original title was Not the Cosbys, because like that was just a working title, because they wanted to be not the Cosbys, not super sweet. And I love Cosbys. I love the Cosby Show. But back then they wanted to create something a little more raw and just white trashy, which they did. And,
they did,
and extremely so.
Should have called it White Trash.
Right. I know that would have been the best working title.
Worked.
I think I have an idea for a spinoff for that.
Yeah,
cut that off for copyright reasons. No, but this show, because of like Care Bears was kind of a thing at the time, everybody getting along, super saccharine stuff. This show kind of came along and is like, nah, we're going to be the opposite of that. Because in the first episode, Binky the Clown, which is like a take on obnoxious Bozo the Clown types kids shows from the 50s, won't leave him alone for some reason, because there's a misunderstanding. And he goes, people like that should be taken outside and shot, and that's pretty harsh for a kid's show. But, Garfield got away with it.
Now, do you remember his voice, the voice actor for him?
Yes, Lorenzo Music.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he the same dude that did Bill Murray's character in Ghostbusters?
You're correct.
Yeah,
that's him.
And I loved his voice because on the Ghostbusters too, because I felt like, man, that nails Bill Murray's voice perfect.
Ray?
I don't know if it was Ray. I can't remember the Ghostbusters names, but I remember loving that cartoon.
Correct us in the comments.
Yes, please. And subscribe.
Yay, subscribe. I'm going to have like a ding, ding, ding.
No kidding, man. I'm probably going to milk that for however well you can. But
it's going to be our thing this episode.
Yes. But the thing was, with that voice for Garfield, I thought it was none better, because of his sarcastic behavior and the way he would talk about lasagna and just not caring and napping, pulling the blanket over his head, Odie bugging him. And I remember that cartoon only for the fact that I was originally forced into watching it.
Okay.
Because not as big a bookshelf as you have behind you, but a smaller one. My sister had all the books that were those rectangular ones.
Oh, yeah.
The long form ones.
Yeah.
You open them up and it's actually comic strips.
Yeah.
My sister was obsessed with those. She was obsessed with a lot of things, but I remember her getting the Garfield books and reading them religiously. She'd get the Sunday funnies on the newspaper, the LA Times, for the Garfield. Yeah. So that was a staple first, and then she would go and get the books, the quickie ones, all that stuff, right?
Yep.
When that cartoon was a thing, she made me watch. So if I wanted to watch another cartoon, no, Todd, You're watching this.
Sorry, click.
Yeah, we don't have our own individual TVs, so it's like, and then she would kick my butt at that time, so she was stronger. Hate to admit that, but she was like...
Well, she was your older sister.
Yeah, she was like 10 years older, but...
Yeah.
But either way, I had no chance, so I had to watch whatever she had on there. So we're watching it, and that would trip me out, and it was one of those things where I even got invested and read a comic book, or not read a comic book, but looked at it and read the very small words that were in it. There's not that much dialogue.
Right.
But I do remember one that tripped me out that they made into a cartoon episode, which in the Garfield books that she had, it was one where he had just this real nightmare of a dream where he woke up hungry, and what was the name of the guy again? Was it John?
John Arbuckle.
Yeah, John Arbuckle made him
Human Master.
Made him a lasagna, and it wasn't enough, and he was just hungry. He starts going through the refrigerator. He starts yelling at Garfield, and then Garfield just eats him. And then he proceeds to eat Odie, and he's like literally killing people. It turns into this thing where he gets so big and fat, like they're shooting missiles at him, and I forget what makes him wake up out of the dream. But I thought that was kind of dark for a comic, but they turned it into an episode, which I was like, man, they made it even darker.
That reminds me of maybe that's where they got the idea for the Simpsons Halloween. There was a Simpsons Halloween where Homer went through the same thing.
Yeah, where
Funny.
But I originally saw that as a Garfield episode.
Interesting. And you read it as a strip
and
first.
as a strip first.
Interesting.
And so when they turned it into an episode, I was like, wow, because I didn't think, because again, back then I hadn't seen a cartoon up until that point, because I would see Transformers later when they first started showing killings.
Right.
And to me, that's a killing. I mean, you're eating somebody, you're killing them, right?
Right.
So it's like...
But it's funny, because it's a funny cartoon. It's a comedy.
I mean, they originally come back as just a dream. Right. But at the time, you're like, oh, like freaking out.
Everyone's dying in my show.
What's going to happen to John now?
I know. Oh, man, yeah. And it's funny because when you think about it, they really had a jump start when it came to storylines, because the strip had been out for 12 years, honestly, before the show started. So they had plenty of material.
Oh yeah, this was not just in the LA Times; it was nationwide.
Yeah, 10 years nationwide. That was a good success story for Jim Davis.
Oh yeah,
who created Garfield. But no, the show was interesting, and you also had the middle segment, which was the U.S. Acres, or Orson's Farm in the rest of the world, as it was called. And in the comic strips, it wasn't part of the Garfield thing, but Jim Davis did create the U.S. Acres strip. It only lasted, I think, from like 86 to 89 or something like that.
So it clearly needed Garfield. It couldn't survive on its own. It was decent, but I will say this. One of the rare things I remember about the show was that the duck we were talking about in the
Wade Duck.
Wade Duck. Did you ever notice on the little life raft around it had the head?
Yep.
His head. And whatever expression he had,
it would mimic.
Yes,
yep.
That's what I remember from that show.
I loved that character because the actor was actually on the Andy Griffith Show.
No way.
And I remember him. Yeah, and sometimes you have like really established character actors on TV that would be in these animated programs.
And you never know unless you really look through the credits, right?
Exactly. He was one of the hillbillies, and he would have this weird like kind of like thing about him that he would do. And he was a great actor, but he had that. I think that part was originally originated by Gilligan, the actor who played Gilligan in Gilligan's Island.
Okay.
But then they switched it to him once I think Gilligan's Island took off, because that actor was actually in a show, TV show called The Loves of Dobie Gillis or something like that.
Never heard of it.
Before that, yeah, it's an older show, black and white, of course. But Bob Denver. I think it was. I'll correct it if I'm wrong.
It was a Denver, if I remember right.
Yeah, it might have been Bob. Yeah. But he was the originator of that character. But then this guy took over, who I thought was a better character actor in general. No offense to anybody's memory, but this guy was just kind of a better actor. You believed he was that part more. He just put more into it. He was more charactery. But as Wade Duck, when I would watch like the behind the scenes or go to IMDb and do research on the show, it was him, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember this hillbilly. I remember him. And it was a great cast, and I think it was better in the Garfield and Friends TV show or animated series than the strip was, because the show from 88 to 94 lasted longer. U.S. Acres lasted longer on Garfield and Friends than it did in the actual strip.
True.
So you had and they made the characters a little more hip. One was like a surfer dude, and then Lanolin was his sister, and she was like hardcore. A lot of the female characters in a lot of these shows were like hardcore, take no nonsense type characters, and
very expressive
and very forceful when they needed to be, and and all that, and kind of not a terrible example for girls necessarily, not great if you just want to be a ball buster, but at the same time, you had female characters that would stand up for themselves, that were pretty modern considering that it was late 80s, early 90s. So that cartoon was part of that change. I forget the character that John keeps trying to go out with. It's Garfield's vet. He's always trying to go on a date with her, and he's just always so nerdy, but she's always such a strong character. They had a lot of strong female characters in there, but in the U.S. Anchor segments, they were pretty fun, and there was always music. in these episodes, there was always a song, and as we said before, these '80s shows had like all these this music that had to be written, performed, and all that, which added an added layer of production to it all. So I have a lot of respect for those shows for those reasons, because the actors had to sing, whether they sang or not, and it was interesting.
That's right. They did have a lot of singing numbers on there as far as related to the show, however it went.
Every episode.
Yeah, you had the leader, which was the Porky Pig kind of character.
Orson. Yeah.
Orson. He never wore clothes.
Right.
Funny.
Which is weird.
And he was kind of like the popular nerd in a way.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
And whenever he would read a book, it would become reality for everyone.
Yeah.
Which sucked for everybody, because they're like, dude, stop. Like, we don't care that you read. Just, you create this hellscape for the rest of us.
Yeah, he had some sort of special power or something, but it was pretty cool. Like they did, like, that's the thing I like. Instead of saying, like, and that's where I think we can go down another rabbit hole if we were to talk about this, but that's why I like, even if a strong female character or just a regular male character, you need good writing. You need to have them establish themselves. You need to have them go through a process. You just can't write in hey, this is a super cool dude right here, and he's so powerful, and you're just going to love him because that's who he is. Yeah. It's like, no, dude. Like, give me some struggle. Give me some build-up. Give me some background. And with this cartoon, again, I knew nothing of these animals, and I knew the Garfield background, but they built in also some side characters for Garfield. You also had
Nermal.
Yeah. So you have, you're establishing the characters the right way, and I think back then again, you have the right kind of writers behind it that could grab the audience and be like, okay, I'm invested in this. This is pretty cool, because, like you said, having Garfield bookending that show in between, it was like it was Garfield at first, and then it turned into Garfield and Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people are like, yeah, you know what? I want to check out those farm animals, see what they're up to.
Yeah, and every episode had like a snarky little remark after the introduction. Mm-hmm. And, you had characters like the Buddy Bears. Hey, we're the Buddy Bears. We always get along. And if you ever disagree, then you are wrong. That whole thing that was just obnoxious, like toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Before that was a thing. And that show was very meta before that was ever a concept in cartoons. But also, I was thinking, this show was based on the comic strip, which was read by adults. Mm-hmm. You had kids that read it too, but newspapers are usually an adult thing, or they were when they were a thing. I mean, they are still in much smaller numbers, but in the 80s and the 70s specifically, everybody was reading a newspaper. And so this cartoon show probably attracted a lot of adults too, so that's why they had that extra layer of adult humor. And they also had, which was interesting, and if you watch it, you realize that breaking the fourth wall was something that happened constantly.
On that show,
it was all the time, and Garfield did it. He looked at the audience when he's like, this guy needs to be taken outside and shot. Like, he had no chill.
No, like when Odie would do something remarkably stupid and still be standing there with a smile on his face, or if he hit Odie and abused him, and then he just like look at the camera and be like,
yeah, exasperated.
Yeah, and there was some touching moments, because obviously Garfield was a total dick.
Right, yeah, he was.
But there would be some moments where he would show love to Odie if Odie was sad, or he'd be like, you're a good boy. And then that would make Odie's day, and then it's like, oh, the heartwarming stuff.
And then he'd kick him off the table.
Yeah.
Well,
he'd always come from behind and kick him.
He, in the TV specials they did, there was more of a camaraderie and more empathy toward Odie in those. But yeah, he was still a dick. But definitely did that.
And I will say this, speaking to your point about adults and humor and starting the Garfield, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to know how my sister got involved with Garfield in the first place?
Sure.
So my mom would read the funnies first, because my dad had a subscription to either the Press Telegram or the LA Times, or maybe both of them.
Gotcha.
So either way, I was more like, hey, I want to look at the sports. Right. But my sister got involved with it because my mom absolutely loved The Far Side.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
my gosh.
And The Far Side was very much adult humor,
yep,
but sarcastic as hell, common sense type stuff. And sometimes you would look at a comic the first time and be like, oh, okay, I get it now,
right. Dude, a friend of mine's dad who loved Garfield also loved The Far Side. We grew up together in the same church.
Oh, okay.
And like his father loved, you might have known him actually. We'll talk about it after, but I remember him loving The Far Side. And that's the first time I ever came across it. That's so funny.
I had a shirt that I couldn't wear today, for obvious reasons, but
Far Side.
But it was a Far Side shirt, and it was what is it for it actually said school for R word.
Oh God.
And it said it showed the kid pushing, and it says pull. And so I'm like, it had no words, but that was it. And I was like, yeah, I really can't wear it.
No.
I had that in high school.
Eric Larson, right? Isn't that the creator of the comic? Larson? I remember that.
But to that point, my mom would read The Far Side. Her and my sister would giggle. I couldn't understand it. I was still too young. And then my sister, just whatever reason, it caught her eye with Garfield, and she became obsessed of it. The stuff you were talking about with the merchandise, yes, as poor as we were, she forced my mom and dad, mainly my dad, to buy her the suction cup Garfield that you could put on the windshield.
We were talking about that off camera, that Garfield was a huge merchandising opportunity, I think, before he ever even became a TV show.
Yeah.
Because, again, the car stickers, I think it was showcased in the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas. Mm-hmm. And, he was a big kind of commodity at that point.
It was in horror flicks. It was in family comedies. You had Garfield hanging out, stuff like that. I mean, people liked it, and it was just simple. But yeah, for a few years there, late '80s, early '90s, mid '90s even, you could find Garfield just about anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Gosh, it's probably landfills full of Garfield stuff. There was so much of it. God, but that show was a trip. And it's funny because Film Roman is the same company that produced The Simpsons initially. Mm-hmm. And that irreverence kind of like stuck with them. They're like, no, let's do something that's gonna piss people off. And they made some great turns there. But in '94, because the show wasn't canceled, the producers quit because the studio wanted to cut the budget because of other things. I think CBS had lost the rights to Major League Baseball or something at that season, or
Makes sense.
They lost a bid.
Was that around like '94?
'94.
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, you would know that exactly. Mm-hmm. And so they tried to make up the revenue somehow. So they wanted animated shows to cut budgets. And Film Roman's like, look, we're still doing good in the ratings, but it's gonna strip too much from the show and the quality of the show, and we'd rather just go out on top. And they did.
Is that what ultimately contributed to the demise of the CBS cartoon block in the morning?
It might have. I mean, when you track anything that doesn't make sense in the business of Hollywood or cartoons or whatever, all that, it's always money. Always.
Because I know it's just like, in college today where the men's sports, football or basketball will flow to college as far as the economics for them to build and refurbish study halls, add new programs, or even fund female sports. Mm-hmm. Like that's their bread and butter. So if that gets cut in any way, the school suffers. Yeah. So I imagine that's probably the same scenario here with CBS because at the time I think baseball ratings were huge.
Yeah.
And I think they had lost football, if I'm not mistaken, a few years before that. So they were in a tough spot. They didn't get football back till like a few years later.
Yeah.
So I do remember those CBS really was trying to go head to head with ABC Saturday morning. Like they wanted to be number one.
Yeah, well, the episode before with Chip and, I'm sorry.
Muppets?
No, I forget. We've done so many of these. We love it though. Subscribe. Yay. With Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yes.
That was also CBS. And they were going head on and trying that. And the thing with CBS is they never knew how to balance things out properly. And I'm saying this because it's not only with this issue in '94, but back in '90 when they were doing the live action version of The Flash, if you remember The Flash, John Wesley Shipp, more people know about it now. But, after I remember being a little child and being disappointed because I still knew how to work a remote as a baby, as a small child. But when we were younger, that show was coming on, and I remember being disappointed because it was never in the same time slot twice. It got preempted by two different things, Major League Baseball on CBS, and it got preempted for the first Iraq War. So, and that show cost $6 million for its pilot in 1990, which was ridiculous. Had a great pedigree of people who did the music. The costumes were amazing. It was like a movie. It was so good. Each episode after that cost $1 million, but After one season, they canceled it because CBS would, again, preempt the show for baseball. And they didn't know what to do with it. And golf.
Tennis, too, I remember.
Yeah, and they would screw all that up, and they never took it seriously. So they really, when it came to like major league stuff, like they would throw the other stuff, no matter how much money they put into it, they would throw it over their shoulder, forget about it, and then just kind of deal with what the new thing that's going to make them more money instead of having a more balanced view of what they should do and just have a better scheduling setup. So that was kind of like what they did, and it's kind of what bit them in the ass then, and what bit them in the ass later on. Because I think the Flash could have gone on to do amazing things. It was so much more, and we'll get back to this, what we're talking about. But it was so much more respectably written, maturely written. When you see another show at the time, Superboy was more juvenile in its writing, and I loved that show as a little kid. But the live action Superboy, didn't hold a candle to the writing and the execution of the Flash.
Oh, dude, and here's an episode, and not to take it any way further from Garfield, we'll come back to it in a second, but I have to bring this up because you brought up so many good points, and it makes me want to think that we can make an episode about talking about CBS, even NBC, who got briefly into cartoons, Warner Brothers, ABC, Fox Kids, and then KCAL. We could talk about who presented it the best, who stuck to the right material, who gave you the best stuff to watch, how they competed, and like how they went off the deep end as far as going more drastic cartoons or just more live action, because you got a lot of live action too. They were trying to cut out the animation.
I think we need to do one episode of how Fox was. It's like a relay. Fox started the race. Warner Brothers finished it.
Yeah,
I think that would kind of be an interesting topic for conversation on that, because you're right. Yeah, it was.
There was a lot of edgy stuff that came from both networks.
Yeah.
I mean, even getting into the live action stuff like Goosebumps, making books come alive.
That's right.
But
remember Erie, Indiana?
Yes.
That show.
Yes. Tales from the Crypt.
That was another one. Yeah, Tales for sure.
They brought those on. So there was a lot of stuff like that we can get into that just, I mean, maybe that's a good Halloween episode.
Oh, maybe so. Maybe so. That might be something coming up. Oh, we might do banned Halloween episodes. There's a lot of shows that did Halloween episodes that
the too graphic or too out there.
And parents complained and got them canceled, which sucks.
But the last thing I got on this for you, Ty, to follow off what you're
sure.
talking about on Channel 2, that was frustrating as a kid.
Southern California, too.
Because there was a lot of, like, say, for instance, like, Southern California, because, again, some of these games in sports, NASCAR, too, would start at 1 o'clock maybe on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. But then by the time it was over here, it's like 11 o'clock. Right. Or maybe they would start at 12 o'clock, but here it's 9 o'clock. So they're cutting into... And because they would show cartoons from like 7 to like 12 in the afternoon.
And they were preempted.
Yeah, they were preempted by other sports stuff. So you're telling the kids, hey, we don't really care about you. Go watch it on cable if you got it. If not, go watch our competitor. It's like
one of our competitors.
It's like, fine, whatever, dude. Deuces.
Exactly. Exactly. And I used to feel that way about the O.J. Simpson trial. It would cut into my after school. Cut into my after school cartoons. I'm like, when is this trial going to be over?
Look, the glove doesn't fit.
I know. You got to go quick. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. I don't care if he did it. I don't care. He probably did. No. But I remember as a kid just being very frustrated going, where are my shoes?
Yeah, exactly.
You're a child, of course. But no, it is funny. But I'm glad that they decided, Film Rome and the company that was producing Garfield and Friends decided, look, we're just going to go out on top. Our ratings are still good. We're not going to compromise on the show, which they felt they were going to have to.
How many shows can say that?
Exactly. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to walk away, because they probably made so much money on the merchandising and all that. I mean, I would hope so, at least, because it was a great show. And the quality from the first to the last episodes were the same.
Yeah.
Like you could watch something from the first season and then the last season, and you really couldn't tell the difference. The storytelling was fun. They got into newer, more experimental things sometimes, but it was still Garfield.
I'm telling you, the sarcasm from that voice actor you mentioned was amazing.
Lorenzo Music. And you know what the funny thing about him was? That he refused to change his voice for anything. So every character he did, it was just him. It was just him doing the voice.
But it was awesome.
No, it was great, but he refused. He's like, I'm not changing anything.
I mean, you could literally probably, when Bill Murray was younger, have him on on a mic like this, and the voice actor on a mic like yours, same kind of mic, and let them talk and be like,
who's who?
Yeah, who's who? Like if they were in a black room and you're like, Well,
the funny thing about Real Ghostbusters, as a little side step, is that they were made because I think they were afraid that they were going to have to pay the actors from the films.
Yeah, much more costly.
So they're like, let's make sure the drawings don't look like them, and we can't make them sound like the actors. but Lorenzo Music kind of sounded like Bill Murray, and I think it was Maurice LaMarche. Was it Maurice LaMarche who played Egon?
Yes.
He made it sound like Harold Ramis, but he did that as a joke. He's like, I'm going to see if Harold Ramis notices, and he didn't have a problem with it.
No, he didn't. But I remember him looking completely different from Harold Ramis. He was blonde, had the ponytail and the glasses and the curl. Yeah,
they all had mullets at some point.
But he was good too.
Yeah, he was.
It was very good.
Yeah, no, it was. But yeah, that was Garfield and Friends, man, and it was one of my favorites, man.
Great show. Yeah. Again, they're short episodes. Very, very good watch.
Yeah, like I said before, there was 363 segments, which is crazy. You know what I mean? Because there's 3 segments per episode. 121 full episodes. That's a great run. That's a great run. It had a great run. And it's still funny today. That's the crazy thing. But now we're going to switch gears and start running home after school, and the time has come. So we're going to start doing something we've talked about in previous episodes, and we're going to actually make this happen. And that is going to be Batman the Animated Series. We're going to start talking about it. Finally.
This is the coup de grace. This for me, Ty, and you know me, and I know you as well. I know you're a Superman guy, but this one made you keep your allegiance somewhere in the middle.
Oh, you know? Yeah. Because this show, I think that's the one thing about this show. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, because I grew up with Superman. I grew up with Batman too, but I grew up with Batman the Animated Series as number 1. That's the thing. Like, this will make you choose, like, whatever show whatever character you like more, this show is this show.
Yeah, to me, I think this has to be the holy grail. If I'm going to put as much as I love the Ninja Turtles, as much as I love other cartoons and stuff that I grew up as a kid, if you had to like twist my arm and say, okay, man, which one is the number 1? This is it.
Pick or die. You're Batman.
Batman. I mean, to me, it's just hands down because it's so beautifully drawn, and there's and acted and everything. The storyline, no matter what, it's just there's so many things you could pull from it. And I will just say this, Ty, rewatching the episodes, I can watch a certain episode and be like, I remember where I was the first time I watched this.
Yeah.
And you can't do that with most other shows. You could say, okay, well, I remember kind of where I was living. Yeah. But I could give you the time where I'm at. You know what I mean?
It's 4:42 on a Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand. That show has that kind of gravitas because each one, and the goal of the show was to make each episode a mini movie, and that's what made it special.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. And sometimes there were arcs and multiple episode arcs and to be continues. But for the most part, they were singular and they were standalone and they all had their own power. And they didn't need to rely on anything else other than what was in that specific episode to be special. And it's a show where there were episodes where you didn't even have super villains. You didn't have his rogues gallery. I remember Appointment in Crime Alley, and sometimes it's just dealing with the death of his parents.
Yeah, or what about Point of View?
Point of View was an amazing episode. Yes. Point of View, if you haven't seen it or don't remember, is that 3 cops have to describe what Batman did. Bullock, of course, gives his, Lieutenant Bullock he hates Batman, so he gives his skewed opinion. And a rookie cop, and then
the rookie cop was awesome.
He was awesome because he was like the tiebreaker. Because Montoya was like totally for Batman and everything he
Officer
did.
Montoya, great character,
and it was, but that was amazing because it taught you about perspective and how because of your biases you might see something a certain way. This show was amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
But episodes like that, and those weren't even like heavy like Batman punching somebody episodes. A lot of it had to do with like, again, gangsters and crime and real things. And the show throughout its run, through all its iterations, kept that through line because they made sure to make it a mature, real kind of. They weren't just placating to children. This was about doing the story justice.
And here's an interesting one from the catalog of multiple episodes that come from the Batman animated series. And I wanted to run this one by you as just a curveball. I'd like to throw at least one curveball per episode.
All right, let's go.
And here's a curveball.
Wind it up.
Now, you mentioned the fact that kids and adults both love this movie because I used to watch this one with my parents as well. They would sneak in and be like, hey, this is really, really good episodes, really good show. But my thing was, generally, if you ask about this episode, everybody hates it. It's from one of the first seasons, and it was, I think it's Batman in I have Batman in my closet, or
I
Batman
have Batman in my basement.
Batman in my basement.
Yeah.
Everyone hates that one.
The one with the kids.
Yes, because from what and it involves the Penguin and stuff. But the fact of the matter is, it shows these kids that have a one-off, and they're, they want to do the right thing. At first, there are just a bunch of kids that are not on the same page. One's a bully, but they all wind up working together. And it took me a while to realize why people hated that episode. Because out of all the animated series episodes, that was the one that was like the most unrealistic. Batman being knocked out for so long, the kids having to save him, it felt very campy. And I think that's why everybody hates that one. I don't know how you feel about that episode.
I don't mind it, because the funny thing is, in some of the best episodes of superhero shows are usually when the superhero has lost his power. Superman was best, I think, did well in the Superman the Animated Series because they pared him down to make him more relatable. And I think for a kid, it's kind of interesting, and it's interesting. The message of a child having to save an adult, is something I think a lot of kids would be afraid of. How do you protect a parent? How do you, if your parent passes out, what do you do? And it's kind of one of those scenarios, especially someone like Batman. But I didn't mind it as much. I was almost thinking of the episode "The Man Who Killed Batman," but that's not where you were going with that.
Yeah.
That was a funny one. But
that is one of the most hated episodes. When it was ranked, it was one of the most hated episodes.
Interesting. Yeah, I never hated that one. Him being knocked out for that long, that's a little much. But I didn't think that I hated it. It probably wasn't one of my favorites. But yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was one of the most hated episodes.
I think it is. When it was polled, it was like the top out of all the just because.
But again, you having to choose like the one you hate the most, like you don't really hate it, but it's like the one you like the least, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Because how can you really hate that show? But
I know. Look, that show created so many memories for me, or just like, because even the video game me and you used to play when it was on Super Nintendo.
No, we played. The one you and I used to play together.
But we did play Super Nintendo, but we played afterwards the video games that were
emulated.
Yeah. But just the fact of the matter is, we got to play games that like the animated series for Super Nintendo and for Sega.
Yeah,
was awesome. It was like
great.
playing the cartoon.
Yep.
And they kept the cartoon graphics. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna break this show down, but how can you not get goosebumps today if you haven't seen it in a while? Or even like when I'd run home and turn on the TV, and I got there lucky enough to see the blimp with the lights shining down, and
the Warner Brothers logo that turned into
yes, and it goes it's like, yes, here we go.
I know, you always you never, and that's one of those shows you don't skip the introductions on.
Never. You wait for that bank to explode.
That's right. Bye capitalism. No, I'm kidding. As an adult, you root for the bank exploding. It's weird.
Oh, yeah, like, right?
Those guys are cool.
Get away.
Stupid Batman trying to stop them. No, I'm kidding. But no, the show was interesting. And in 1990, a little bit of history of it, after the success of Tiny Toon Adventures, because we were talking about how big and important that show was. Were you finished with what you were saying?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
no,
I'm sorry.
You're good.
I apologize. But from the following, in 1990, following the success of Tiny Toon Adventures, Warner Brothers Animation wanted the president, Gene McCurdy, announced that the animation team was going to kind of explore their IP and help develop Batman, a Batman show. And of course, they were given certain parameters to follow because, as we were saying earlier, Fox Kids kind of originated this show. So it's weird that, Warner Brothers didn't have its own network yet for kids, but Fox was the network that Fox Kids was what Batman was produced on. And they were given this laundry list of things they could not do or say. And in there's a book called the Batman Animated Book. And it's kind of hard to find. And I have the hardcover, and I love that thing. And I wish they would reprint it because it would sell so many copies. But they broke down very creatively, like the show and what they were trying to do. But the artists came up with a drawing behind the scenes of all the things they couldn't do, put into one piece of art, with Batman crashing out a window with Catwoman. No nudity. You can't say, I'll see you in hell. Kids can't be put in danger. No bullets being shown, nobody being like openly shot, and just all these things that are like in all the comic books that you're like, well, how is Batman going to survive this? So they kind of made a joke out of it. But even with all those parameters in place, they still went ahead and made a very good high quality show. and they worked around those parameters, but it really worked out well because they got to be more creative that way. And it was a fundamentally groundbreaking show for a lot of reasons, and it was very successful. And they were given the task of making it like the old, instead of making it like, because it was after Batman, Tim Burton's Batman in '89, and the success of that. And you would think the studio would be like, you know what? Let's copy this exact formula. Let's make it exactly like this.
No,
and they're like, no, we want you to make it like the '40s cartoon. Again, taking a page, I think, from Disney and the success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So they wanted to go with that '40s style, and they didn't want to regurgitate what came before. And the guys that were on the team, the creative team for Batman the Animated Series, also worked on Tiny Toon Adventures. So a lot of those people came over, and they did Batman episodes. They did spoofs of the Batman movies. Bat Duck. They did a couple of the Bat Duck episodes, which were hilarious. Those were my favorites. But spoofing like the Tim Burton film that had just come out. But
or the short Batman, like when they'd be in like a movie star premiere thing. He's real short with a big old chin and everything.
I know, they made fun of him. They made fun of him like crazy, yeah. And the funny thing is, with Batman Returns looming before Batman the Animated Series, you'd think there'd be more demands. The only demand they did make was on the Penguin. That's why the Penguin looked the way he did. Because they're like, well, we're going to have the Penguin in this, and we want the Penguin in the Batman Animated Series to look like that one. So that's why he kind of resembled the Danny DeVito Penguin.
But other than that, most of the characters...
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And otherwise, they got to do their own thing.
I loved it because the drawings were good. Like we brought it before, the noir. Now, the police vehicle, I think that was found like at a World's Fair. They saw that the SWAT vehicle.
Yeah, because their concept was like, what if the 1939's World's Fair never ended?
Yeah, and it was just like a gradual progression of that. And Gotham looked dark as hell, but very detailed.
Yep.
You had the blimp. I mean, Gotham police had the blimps, to help out the police down on the below. The SWAT team was hilarious because you see those spoofs in the 80s where the SWAT team will come out of the cars and they're all, hut, 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 hut. Right. And they would do that on there too. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So you had some little bit of bits and pieces of comedy. The show also had like you said, like Almost Got Him.
Almost Got Him. Yeah, one of the best.
He's not prominent in that. It's the villain point of view.
It's told in flashbacks.
Yeah, and then also the one from the first season where they're snatching up the guys, the big fat guys, getting those guys as slaves.
That one, that was I forget the name of that, but that was no Batman. It was just Bruce Wayne he lost his memory.
Yeah, he lost his memory by getting hit, and then he was just like one of the guys working out. And
a chain gang. He was part of the chain gang.
Yeah, part of the chain gang. And that was a great episode because it gave you new characters, a city life of Bruce Wayne, and then he started to remember stuff. And then it was
based on character, not on action.
Yes, and it was a great episode because, again, Batman would wipe the floor with a villain in that one.
Right.
But you needed him to go through all the struggles to come back and even get help from Alfred freaking out, flying the Batwing. So, I mean, dude, all those episodes are amazing and deserve a great detail, which I hope we get into at some point. But the overview of the cartoon itself, that was literally, and like you said in a previous episode with Darkwing Duck, the build up for Darkwing Duck to premiere, it was the same thing with this one.
I don't remember that. I don't remember the build up.
Okay, so there was this like Fox logo, and it would say the Fox afternoon block, and it would show certain characters moving around the logo, and then in the top left corner it had a door opening up and Batman walking through it.
Oh wow! And
I was like, whoa, what's that mean? And it didn't tell you at first, and then all of a sudden you start seeing, coming soon Batman animated series. I'm like, holy crap!
Yep,
I'm ready.
That's right. I know. Yeah, I don't remember that. I gotta look that up because that sounds interesting. But yeah, Fox. It's funny when the show moved to Warner Brothers, the kids WB, they had less things they had to worry about. Like they became much more loose and fast with the rules.
Well, yeah, think about their programming at the time. Married with Children was still in syndication. It was still on. They had The Simpsons pushing the envelope. Both those shows very edgy.
But they couldn't do that with Batman. They couldn't do that with Batman. They were very strict with what they would allow.
All they were able to do was make it dark, but tell a good story, but it worked.
Yeah, because that style carried them into for the next decade and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had plenty of shows that they were running, like we talked about Goosebumps, other stuff like that, pushing the envelope, whereas other networks were saying, okay, family-friendly kid-friendly kind of cartoons. Maybe get some action heroes.
Yeah.
Fox was just like all in. Let's scare the crap out of these kids.
Right? Except for Batman. Let's just make it really
and then we'll bring
dark.
along Superman too.
I know.
Then they had X-Men.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
X-Men cartoons. It's funny how good those cartoons were, and they weren't able to show a lot. But X-Men got, some blood in there. You got some stuff.
Oh yeah, and you lost some characters every now and then.
Morph. I think Morph died in like the first episode, the first couple episodes.
X-Men was.
Yeah.
Look, 97's a good like remake, but it won't touch the beginning. It's close. I liked it a lot, but dude, X-Men was again another great cartoon, which. Finally, to me, in that particular time period, Ty, they had really still not up to that point had any good outside of Batman, any superhero movies. So the superhero cartoons though, your Supermans, your X-Men and Justice League Spider-Man. Oh yeah, Spider-Man was amazing.
Yep.
And then Batman. I mean, geez, you had great entertainment. Great entertainment.
Yeah, you did. No, it was great. And
brought the comic books finally to life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because it's based on, because Max Fleischer's Superman from the 40s was extremely successful. Paramount, unfortunately, took it away from them halfway through the run. That's why the second half of those original 17 shorts aren't really seen as good story-wise. But Superman also learned to fly in those because, they leap tall buildings in a single bound. They're like, it looks kind of silly. Can we just make him fly? And they're like, yeah, sure. That's how Superman learned to fly. That's how they got him to fly, because he just kind of looked dumb when he's just prancing between buildings. And they're like, it looks kind of weird, him just kind of leaping like that, like a ballerina. Can we just, and that's how Superman learned to fly. But it's funny how that gave birth to what we know as Batman the Animated Series, because those were respected because remember, these people were film people. Bruce Timm and all that, they were all students of the arts, and they're like my mom's age. And they're around that age, and she grew up with film noir in the 60s and 70s, watching it on TV, and they grew up with that. They studied that in school. So a lot of the touches, the old film touches, were put in there as well. That's why they were so perfect for this, because they had respect and love for what came before, what they grew up with that their parents had, and, because it wasn't their generation either, but that they were familiar enough with to recreate in a way that was just natural and good. And even like the actors that they cast originally for this were pretty high caliber actors. I mean, we always talk about Kevin Conroy as Batman being like the best Batman.
R.I.P.
Kevin Conroy, rest in peace. He was amazing. Lauren Lester, and these people had distinctive voices. Andrea Romano was the voice casting director, and she's the one that's responsible for casting these people, and she was terrific at her job.
Brilliant.
She is now retired, unfortunately. I hope she hears this at some point, because I'm like, to be cast by her is like being cast as Moses by God. That's how powerful. That's what a great ear she had. That's how good she was at her job.
Her foresight.
Yeah, she was so awesome. Mark Hamill, who his Joker, you can see, started evolving before when he was playing in the live-action Flash TV show. Wow, that's another connection to that show.
Yeah, and
he played the Trickster.
Exactly, the Trickster, one of my favorite characters.
Yep.
And that's the thing. From him being who he is and being the Joker, I think that resurrected his career at the time. Because he had no work, and all that did was spawn whatever career he's got now, which is still in the comics, which is doing voiceovers, cameos. But man, all this and ignited, even when they would change, like, hey, let's do another adaptation of Batman. Guess who was Joker's voice, even though they drew him crudely different from the original? You got to go with Hamill. Guess whose voices were on all those video games? Mark Hamill.
That's right.
Because it works. Because his laugh, the way that he made you feel like even in Arkham Asylum, when that thing is as gritty and grimy and just like real like violent, his voice and his character made that game.
Originally, Tim Curry, was it Tim Curry?
Yes, Tim Curry,
who was originally the voice in the first 3 episodes that the Joker was in, but he was replaced. And there are videos out there and special features where you can see him talking about it, or you can hear him, and they have the video of him, doing the voice before Mark Hamill took over and redubbed them. And you're like, it's not the same. Like, no. Mark Hamill was like the man. And it's not like Mark wasn't getting work, but the work he was getting was like B sci-fi. And of course, they're always going to offer him like, cheap sci-fi and things like that, because that's what he was known for. But he was, this definitely gave him a second career.
Do you remember the PlayStation games Wing Commander?
Yeah.
Mark Hamill was in those.
Oh, he was.
He was the lead, and so they had a lot of.
He was.
Yeah, they had. It was basically you're playing a movie with like cheap graphics,
Right.
But there were so many cut scenes. It might have well been. You had like I remember Wing Commander 2 was 3 discs, and so like the video game. There's a lot of cut scenes, and Mark Hamill was the main guy.
That's crazy. Yeah, and you know what? Now I hope Mark Hamill can work whenever the heck he wants. He probably can, and just live the life like William Shatner.
Yeah, just drink that blue milk.
Drink that blue milk. You just go out there. You go to the Comic Cons and just enjoy yourself and enjoy the very well earned life that gives you. You know what I mean? Because he's iconic and a pretty good guy. You know, from what all accounts. And you know, he was terrific in that. Richard Mall, who was Bull from Night Court, was Two-Face.
That's
Harvey
right.
Dent. And Lauren Lester, this is funny, he played Robin and Dick Grayson.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching the movie Red Eye when it came out. And then in the airport, she runs past and bumps a guy. And all he says was, "Hey." And I go, "Oh my God, I know that voice." I go, "That's Robin." I looked at the credits. It was Lauren Lester.
Wow.
And I'm like, I knew it. But that's how iconic their voice is. He just said, "Hey." And I go, "Robin."
And
I go, that's I know what that is.
A light bulb came off.
Yep. And I'm just like, oh my, I wasn't paying attention to him, but I heard his voice and then I looked over on the screen to him and I'm like, that's gotta be him. And it was. And so, you know, these voice actors are just Paul Williams as the Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Paul Williams is a big musician. You know what I mean? They got really prestigious actors and performers to voice these roles because they were right for the roles.
Yeah, even the unknown guys like the Scarecrow had a wonderful voice. I don't know if you know who that is, but I don't know him. But he did a wonderful voice for Scarecrow. You had just like or
Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter was Roddy McDowell.
And I love the fact that they introduced him. He was a great, and like, hey, I made the secretary as
Oh yeah, Alice.
Oh,
Perchance to Dream is one of the greatest Batman the Animated Series episodes.
And he does the poem at the end, and it has the book open.
So good. John Glover is the Riddler.
Why don't we? We're gonna have to break that episode too. That deserves it.
I think what we're gonna do is pick certain episodes that encompass everything we want to talk about, all the greats, and then break them down into their individuals,
or even small segments like. One of the very first episode, the bat one, the what was
Man
it?
Bat,
where the security
on leather wings,
on leather wings, the security guard. Yeah, he's doing the voice because he's trying to get that acting job.
Right,
just small stuff like that.
They had great touches. They had a lot of great touches on that show, and I remember that when they showed them the first episode, you know, of what they were doing, they had no clue. And when they watched it, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, I think, were there, and they looked at each other and they're like, "Did you know this is what we were working on?" They're like, "This is unbelievable." They just how well it was put together, the style of it. They were blown away. They had no idea because actors do the voice work before anything's animated. So they're recording the lines and they're not seeing anything animated. So months later, when the initial episode comes in, even if it's a rough work print, they get to see it for the first time and it's animated to their voices, and they were in awe themselves. And these guys had done big TV, big movies, but this blew them away.
Yeah, and another thing about this show, and I imagine because it was nothing like that was on TV at the time, but the fact that I can remember small parts like the one I just told you on Leather Wings. There's another episode where Bullock is talking to Commissioner Gordon, and this one nerdy, what is it called? Nerdy, like a pretty girl walks by, and Bullock was like, he looks at her like that, and she kind of like smiles at Gordon, and then looks at him like, oh, and then he's like, hey now, and then Gordon's like, you were saying, you know, like, yeah. or like when Gordon's talking to Batman, and Gordon's like, well, you know, I do have that thing this week, and I hate when he does that. Right. or he's like, next time I'm gonna nail his feet to the ground.
Yeah, nail his feet to the floor. Commissioner Gordon was Bob Hastings. These are older actors. Alfred was Ephraim Zemblis Jr. And you know, there was a lot of great stuff. Even the writing staff. What's his name? He was I think Joshua in the Ten Commandments.
Oh wow!
His daughter was a writer on the show.
That's crazy.
I'm spazzing on his name. My mom's gonna kill me. She loves him. But his daughter ended up being a writer on the show. Like there's so much prestige attached to this show in the most subtle ways. But it really all came together, and there was talent on every angle when it came to this show. From the layouts that were painted on black backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
to the voice acting, to the writers. I mean, this show won Emmys. It was such
Oh,
a
absolutely.
great show. And I think we're going to get into different segments coming up. But I think next episode, I want to crack down a little bit on the music, because that's an unsung hero of this show. And the
This
music
should just
is
be a Batman
brilliant.
segment.
Yeah.
Well, last thing I got, and it's just another obscure episode to throw out there because this one will be needed to be analyzed too, is the what is it called? The one with the puppet. He was the ventriloquist.
Yeah.
That one both freaked me out, but also like got me to understand and research schizophrenia. And
oh, yeah.
because I didn't understand why he was so hell bent on voicing that character, because it was taking him over on the inside in his brain. He was having a battle with himself, and it was such a brilliant character to introduce to the Batman genre. I know he had been in the comics briefly, but it wasn't a focus, because I remember seeing him in a few Batman comics prior, but way back. And then so I was like, wait a minute, I kind of know that character, but they redesigned him and redid it so good.
Yeah. Before, the name I was thinking about was John Derek. It
Okay,
was John
John
Derek's
Derek,
daughter.
okay.
But no, the ventriloquist was such an interesting character because the puppet was so bloodthirsty.
Yes.
And he was such a milquetoast, the ventriloquist. And
Innocent simp.
remember the episode where it's the rehabilitation episode where he's being systematically driven mad so he can go back. The gang is trying to get him to be the gangster again. And that was a terrible. I mean, that was terrible for them to do, but it was so sad that this guy was trying to turn his life around. This is an episode of a kids show. This guy's trying to turn his life around, be good, not fall into the trap of the ventriloquist again, his own psychosis.
He's calling him idiot.
Yeah, and he's calling himself an idiot because this is the same guy, but two distinct personalities. And the episode's just about Batman trying to find out who's doing this, who's trying to get him to go back, and I think it's his old gang.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when Batman finds the
Come on, dummies.
the little guy in the
Phone booth.
Yeah,
From the phone booth, but he runs.
yeah, but when he finds the puppet in the bed, he doesn't know if it's a puppet or not. And he picks it up. He's like, "The hell?"
That was a good one. I mean, The Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne, when it's just about, the one about eternal youth.
That one, and what about the one with you talked about this before when me and you were talking a while back about Batman, but the little child actor that never grew up.
Oh, Baby Doll.
Yes,
So two characters were originally created for this show: Baby Doll and Lockup. And that was in the last part of the season. That was the end of the original 85 episode run. But she was like a child actress that never grew up, but she had a disease that never allowed her to grow. So she always looked like a child.
Like a Webster character.
Exactly. And another character that was created for this show was Harley Quinn.
Oh my God.
She did not exist in the comic books.
Best.
She first made her appearance, I think, in issue 13 of the Batman Adventures comics based on this show. And then they brought her into the comics.
I got one more curveball because that reminds me of one more
Yeah.
thing. Let's see if you remember this one.
Okay.
It's a episode with Two-Face, and he's got somebody hostage. It's in his casino. And you remember those two redhead freckled twins that he had? I never saw him after this episode, or did you? Because I don't remember after this episode. But when what's his name, Thornton, comes in with his group,
Thorne.
Rupert Thorne,
Rupert Thorne,
which was an awesome character too. But when the doors open and Two-Face turns around and goes, "Who's here?" and he goes, "What?" and those two, they fall over.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, did he just kill him? and I don't see him after that. So, do you know if they made another appearance?
I don't know. I know they couldn't show murder, but it could have. A lot of things were implied, so it may have been implied that he killed them, or he could have just not. I mean, more than likely, he knocked them out. They got sent to jail.
Okay, we'll play on that.
But they could have died. Hell, man, because
that's what I thought.
Batman's not always perfect in how he hits somebody. He hits somebody the wrong way, they die. No one's perfect. It happens. It's an accidental homicide. But no, that was a good one. The Two-Face ones were really, really deep and really good, especially because he didn't just show up as Two-Face. You saw him become Two-Face
through a season.
Yep, and split personality.
Oh, dude.
So that was deep for a kid show, but this is part of why we love Batman the Animated Series and why it kind of shaped us into who we are.
Yeah,
but
because I felt bad for two women in that show, and obviously a lot of the women in that show, but the one was Harvey Dent's wife. And also, I felt bad for
Freeze's wife.
Freeze's wife when she finally came back too. I was like, ah.
Oh, and the Batman, the New Adventures,
Yeah.
And that show, that Mr. Freeze is where he got his origin basically unified in that show.
Correct.
They really made that, and that was Heart of Ice. I think is actually the Paul Dini episode that won the Emmy, if I'm not mistaken.
So many good episodes.
It was so good. And those the Freeze ones were always terrifying because he was kind of a comical character in the comics and in the original TV show. I mean, they're all comical in the live action show in the 60s, but they really made him a terrifying character. In that one.
I mean, he didn't care. Like he had literally a heart of ice when he freezes his own dude. And he knows that Batman's not going to chase him.
Sorry.
Yeah. And the kid's like dying over there, and Batman has to put him in his crowd chamber to warm him up.
Yeah, Robin. Like it was Robin. Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. It was Robin. That's right.
Make your choice, Dark Knight, or something like that. Michael Ansara did that voice, and he was married to the actress that was I Dream of Jeannie.
Oh, okay.
He was married to her for years. They have a kid together, I think. But he was a great voice actor. He was very, very unique in his sound. But he was a great casting. He was Mr. Freeze. Garfield and Friends, Batman the Animated Series, whenever I read any of these characters, those are the voices I hear in my head. I hear their voices voicing those characters because that's how iconic it is for me. I don't know if it's the same for you, but whenever I read something, like it's in their voices, at least initially.
Oh, yeah, because I could totally picture it because it just, I mean, who else is not going to read a Harley Quinn episode, or not episode, but comic, or a line without trying to use her quirky voice?
Arlene Sorkin, rest in peace as well. I
mean,
hey,
Mr. J.
Hey, Mr. J. Dude, let me see. So Kevin Conroy, Arlene Sorkin, Richard Mall, they're all gone.
Yeah.
They all passed away. A lot of, we're losing our cast. We're losing these guys, and it's so sad. And, Kevin Conroy's story was especially sad, but, I mean, it all is. I mean, they're so iconic to us. But it's a great show, and it's iconic for a reason, and that's why we're going to keep talking about it, segmented in a few episodes, talking about different aspects, our favorite episodes, and along with the structure we have going on so far, talking about Saturday mornings and all that, and Disney, because we are TNT the K-Cal kids. So we just want to say thank you so much once again for tuning in and listening to us. Please like, share, and subscribe as we go along with some of the favorites that we all grew up with. Once again, I'm Ty Justice.
I'm Todd Fox.
I'll see you next time.